If you saw my LEGO train video 2 weeks ago with the LEGO Hogwarts Express from 2018, I told you I'd make the set 5 times better, and this is how I made the set 5 times better. I actually just went out and bought 5 times the quantity of this set to have 5 passenger cars, and that's why the set's 5 times better. But if that's not good enough for you, I also put a motor in the engine. The motor is actually within the locomotive, and I'm going to show you how I built it. That way you can build one yourself. I'll show you how I used the cool Powered Up app to make this all happen. And then if you want to see the set review, check out this video because I reviewed it 2 weeks ago. And I think it's a pretty cool set, and I'm going to show you the 5 passenger cars now. Here is the Hogwarts Express in motion on one of my ceiling train loops. You might be asking yourself, what are you going to do with the rest of the locomotives, tenders, and train stations? I actually plan on building one large train station. I want to keep one of the other locomotives and tenders, and the rest I'll probably just part out on my Bricklink store. That way I can sell off some of the parts I don't need. As you can see here, I thought this set would look amazing with 5 passenger cars. That way it's, like a full Hogwarts Express train. I definitely think it does look really nice with them. I actually motorized the locomotive. I'll show you that. And I have the battery box and the tender. Everything is the exact same size as it was, and it took a while to perfect it, and that's why I did not post this last week, because I was not satisfied with the quality of how it looked and how the motor was in there. But now I think it's pretty good. I've seen videos where people put a train motor within the tender and increase the size of the tender. I do think that's an easier method, and it actually is probably a faster train than this one with this motor. If you actually have this Harry Potter set, or if you've seen my review from a few weeks ago, you'll notice that this locomotive with the motor in it looks nearly identical to the actual Hogwarts Express locomotive without these modifications. As you can see, I put the battery box in the tender, but a huge part of this was making sure I can actually leave the cabin open. As you can see here, I wanted to make sure the furnace, the gauges were still there, and that I could put a figure in there while this train is being operated. Obviously, the wire will be a little bit in the way, but I can still fit an engineer in there or a conductor for this train, which that was a goal of mine. Then if you look at it here, you can see the motors underneath there. At the end of this video, I will show you how I completely built this. I'll have various clips of part per part, how this was constructed. It won't be perfect instructions, but it'll be enough to exactly show you what I did. Temporarily, I used this remote to power the train. However, I did mainly use the Powered Up app through LEGO. This app allows me to have a variable speed for this locomotive, just like you would for the regular train motor. To actually attach a top coal piece to the tender here, I used just a 4x6 plate with a few studs on it to make it look like coal. You can do whatever you want to be decorative. But on the bottom here, I used one of these modified round plates that has the, curvature. And this pretty much allows me to click this battery button on and off with keeping this plate on it. This method has been used in other train sets before, and I thought I'd incorporate it with this tender. Now that it's on, I can simply click this in to hit the button for the battery. Each one of those is a click, and as you can see, the color is changing. It's still connected, and if I hold it in, I can turn the battery off. The front 2 wheels here are the ones that are actually connected to the gears. It's very important that they have the rubber bands if you're actually going to do this, because that allows them to have friction while on the track and it allows the motion. The back 2 wheels don't necessarily need the rubber bands. However, I did add them because I want those wheels to always have friction. That way it's consistently turning that piece and sending that lever in and out. That way it looks, like an actual locomotive. I thought that was a better feature to have. And off the train goes. This train is a little slower. It's because of the motor. But here you can see these pieces moving along the side here. I think it looks pretty good. As you already saw on the ceiling loop, this train was able to pull the 5 passenger cars, but on a small oval like this with half circles, with only a few straights in between the half circles, it was very difficult for it to pull the 5 passenger cars. If you have a small oval like this, I recommend just 3 passenger cars or 2. Don't go for 5 unless you have a larger setup like I do. Now I'm going to get into this build and how I actually created the locomotive. I'll have this sped up, but you should be able to actually see what's going on. A lot of these parts are from the locomotive, but certain things like the axles, gears, and a couple other parts here, a few plates and so forth, are parts that I pulled from my collection. You will need to purchase or have parts in your collection to do this. Again, you'll need to buy your power functions as well. I really hope you're able to see what's going on here. That way you can recreate this yourself. A lot of this you can modify and change it up if you want. Overall, the motor here with the gears, I think, is a very important setup that you might have to go with that if you want the wheels to be in the same area where they currently are. I played around with this a lot, and this is the end result of what I thought was the best possible solution for this. This motor is currently sold by Lego. I actually picked it up at a Lego store very recently for this purpose, and I find it works much better than the old power functions, these new powered up functions. It works great just having the one battery box with the built-in receiver and this motor. I currently do not have a list of the actual separate parts from the set that you'll need to complete this. Hopefully you'll be able to look at the video and see what you'll need. If I ever create a list, I'll leave it in the description. And if I ever modify the tender to fit my 9V trains, the ceiling setup I have to make this train faster, I'll also include make a video on that or leave a link in the description on how I did that with step-by-step instructions. These two studs that you see here, the dark bluish gray, they're actually going to shift position, and you'll notice that in a moment. But I unfortunately, when reassembling this, I had to kind of refigure it out as I went with the parts in front of me. This piece here right now that I'm attaching is to hold the front wheels. You can't really change this up too much from what Lego had. It has to have that one lift arm piece. Otherwise, the wheels won't turn properly and they'll lift off and derail off the track. A lot of this, again, trial and error. And here, when you see me put in large chunks, these are the exact chunk pieces from the actual locomotive. I tried to keep as much together as possible when reassembling it that way. If you see something like this, the furnace, it has the same build in the Lego manual if you're building along with that. For the white axle piece I used to hold the front wheels in, make sure you're using frictionless pins. Some pins have friction pieces on them to prevent it from turning or make it harder to turn. We want to use ones that are very freely turning. That way it allows motion. Here is where I'm changing over the position of those studs because I realized I had them in the wrong location. Now I add a 2x4 plate there. And now I'm going to add the rail on the side of this. This is a part where these were normally set on top of the red plates, but I had to add my own bars and plates that came alongside the battery pack versus the ones that were just flat on there, the 4x, I think it was 6x8 plates in red. And that's the exact same mirrored part. You put those on. And I'm putting these tiles here. I thought this was a creative solution. These tiles fit perfectly when I put the top of the locomotive on, and they give that gearbox a little extra support holding kind of this entire build together because, again, it has the giant void in the middle where the gearbox is, or the motor. Then I'm just attaching a few other parts here. You can put the wheels on now. You could have put them on earlier, but I just waited until I got to this part. Again, the ones that have the gears on them, you want to make sure they have rubber bands. The back ones, they're not necessary that you have the rubber bands. I know the rubber bands cost a little bit of money, but I like having them because it allows, they're always turning, they're not slipping, and it allows for this lever arm to push into that one area, make it look like a locomotive. Don't mind my terminology. I'm just trying to explain things as I go and help you build this. This whole piece of the locomotive here is from the set. I just pulled it off and now I'm putting it back on. This is where it goes in its position, the exact same spot. Again, like that front bumper is the same. Whenever you see me pulling a large part out of nowhere and then just attaching it to this, it's the exact same part that it would have been on the other locomotive, the original one. This goes on top of the furnace and I put the wire in between there. It just kind of holds the wire down. I put the wire at this position because I wanted to keep the gauges and furnace there. However, you can change this up and make it really however you want there and modify this back section. That doesn't really matter, but I wanted to make it as if it was still a locomotive with a figure in it. Then we have these pieces, again, same from the set. I just pop them back on, hook the bar piece in there, and then this locomotive is just about done. I just need to put that roof panel back on it. Once that's on, we are done. Time to move on to the tender, but there's your locomotive. Hopefully you understand what's going on. The tender, it's not too really anything different. I think I just added these 1x8 plates and then a red tile on top of the battery box as well as the coal parts. That's what I put there. I put that 2x4 plate, 1x4, and then a 1x6 tile. And then this is the 4x6 plate. I've showed this before, and that allows for easily pushing down that button to turn on the battery pack or turn it off. And you plug it into either slot, hook that up, and now your train is ready to be powered and run around the track like this. Beautiful. Look at that style. Yeah, I'm very pleased with this, and hopefully you guys can modify yours like this, and that way it looks more like a legit locomotive and that you're not motorizing the tender or sacrificing the cabin space or the furnace. You can still have a figure in here. And finally, it is time for me to show you the Lego Powered Up app, what I did to power this locomotive with my phone for this video. The first thing I did here is why I went to create. I have this Express one already created. When you go to the block section, you're able to create different blocks depending on what you're trying to do or what motors you have, which is pretty cool. It was a little confusing at first, but I learned this through somebody else's video, and I'm going to learn more about it. But essentially, this is the setup you need to have, and then you add this widget here, which allows you to alternate the power to your locomotive and make it like a real train. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made the set 5 times better by just making a much longer passenger train for the Hogwarts Express, how I added a motor into the train, and so forth. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to see more LEGO content, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions, concerns, or thoughts for another train video. Thank you. If you want to see something else, check out this. We'll see you soon.
LEGOMyJamesO.